Professor?
Yes.
Hi, how's it going? Sorry, I just wanted to mention, last Friday, I don't know if you remember, we got into groups and I wasn't there. So I went to rewatch the class yesterday because I was having problems with my Wi-Fi on Friday, and I watched it yesterday and I heard that you were calling my name and I wasn't there. Just wanted to apologize about that. Can't hear you.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
All right, sorry about that.
All right. Hello everybody. Welcome to week 7. So could you please turn your cameras if you're here? Good morning. Let's see. All right. Um, Guys, I have a question unrelated to the class per se. Uh, how, do we have anyone here who lives in campus? Okay, so Fernando lives in. So Fernando, what's the current policy restrictions regarding living on campus? The latest one.
Um, oh my, okay. Well, you can't go into people's dorms, but you can, and you can't really gather outside with people who like aren't your roommates. Well, at less than 6 feet.
Mm.
You can't go into any buildings.
Okay.
Yeah, like there are no classes there in person. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So the thing about meeting people outside. So you say you can meet people outside if you were standing 6 feet apart.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Um, can you work out outside?
Yeah, you can. There's actually an outside
Okay.
that you can go to, like on campus.
Okay. Thank you for the clarifications. Okay. So, uh, so let's start. So today's lecture is going to be different because we're not going to talk about like a research method, i.e., like how you collect data and analyze data, but it's still related to what you should do or you should not do when you're trying to collect data. So it's about the ethical framework of research. And so this is important for you in order to like understand what are the regulations, legal and ethical, surrounding the conduct of research, how you can be critical of past and current research based on the model that I mentioned. And so we're going to talk about just why we have an ethical review of research, like how did it emerge, the major ethical principles, some ethical issues regarding certain historic and even recent cases, and things like ethical considerations even after you collect the data. And then how would that apply also in outside the academic world? So we'll only spend 2 days, and Friday, as you know, is first exam. So let me see. So I'm going to play, and let me know if the sounds work or not. Okay, just by like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Yeah. So the headphone is not plugged in. You hear?
In July of 1972, the Washington Star newspaper broke the story about the controversial Tuskegee Institute syphilis experiment. For 40 years, from 1932 until 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service, in partnership with Tuskegee, secretly studied the effects of untreated syphilis in African American men in Alabama. 600 black men, 399 with syphilis, and 201 without the disease, were induced to participate in the experiment. Nearly all of them were poorly educated, impoverished sharecroppers. In exchange for participating, they were promised free medical exams, hot meals, and a burial stipend. The men with syphilis were not told they were infected and were not treated, even after penicillin was discovered to be an effective cure for the disease in the 1940s. Over the course of the experiment, 128 participants died of syphilis or syphilis-related complications. In 1972, when the paper exposed the details, the experiment was still ongoing. It incited public outrage over the unethical treatment of the participants, which led to the experiment's termination that November. The following year, the NAACP filed suit on behalf of the survivors. The federal government settled the lawsuit for $10 million. It also agreed to provide survivors and their infected family members with free medical services.
All right. So, how many of you have heard about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment before? No one. Cool. So, could someone to recap what happened? So, probably I'll post the slides by the way, so you might watch it again. Um, so, you know what syphilis is, at least, right? Okay. So it's, yeah, infectious disease. Yeah, it could kill you, like harms your skin, your nails, your bone. And so the syphilis, to the Tuskegee syphilis study. So what they did was that in the 1940s, when penicillin was being developed, and so as you all know, it has to be tried on human subjects when you have a new medicine or if you have a new medication or a new vaccine. And so they recruited many participants. And so you have to have people with syphilis and people without syphilis, right? In order to have like a comparison base. Okay. And so they were Black people who had syphilis and Black people and others who did not. The issue is when they did the groups in the terms of like people who get the treatment, people who do not get the treatment, in order to have a comparison, right? So you have to have what we would call a control group. All of the people that were, so the people in the control group, only so Black people who had syphilis were all put in the control group. But none of them was like in the treatment group. Okay, so you see the point. So that continued throughout the 40s. So at the beginning, they didn't know if it was effective, but then in later stages, they discovered it's actually penicillin is effective. But that experiment kept going on and on, right, with that disparity. So some group of people with syphilis were barred from taking the medication because they were Black, right? And penicillin became even commercially available in the 50s, but then only, like as you heard in the video, in the 1970s, the story broke out and they had to shut down the study. So the question is, based on what you heard, do you think those people were deceived? Why is that? Why do you think they were deceived?
I think because they didn't tell them that they had syphilis.
Right. So they didn't tell them they had syphilis. And what else they didn't tell them? What was the promise of the experiment? That they will be getting what?
The cure.
Mm-hmm. And did they get the cure? Did the participant get the cure? The Black participant?
No, they didn't.
Yeah. So you so poor Black folks were told like, yeah, you can get the cure if you're infected. So they thought we would go through medical examination and then they will try this new cure. Okay, but they were not. Did the participants benefit from participating? Did they get any benefit from taking part in this experiment? You can just nod if you. Okay, so Tomi is nodding. Fernand is nodding no. Right. So there was no benefit for the treatment. So if you, let's take a realistic example. So if you participated in, let's say, the trials for the vaccine, right, for COVID, you would assume that you will at least benefit, right? Like getting an early shot, or if not, at least you'll get some truthful medical examination, right? So the participant didn't benefit in either cases, right? And so this what gives rise to, so this was like a huge news, especially it followed the Civil Rights Act, like 1964, 68. And so the issue was like considered like three things. What were the researchers' motives? That was the investigation. But what were the researcher motives of conducting the study as such, how they treated the participant, and then the consequences of this research, right? And so in 1974, the National Research Act was passed by Congress. And so it said that any entity that is getting federal funding must establish like a formal code of ethics. And so any research that will be conducted must go through that evaluation of following the code of ethics, or like the code of conduct. And we call that the IRB. So this is the Belmont report was passed, or like was published, and it's basically detail the things that researchers have to take into account in terms of like their motives, the treatment of participants, and what the effects of the research are. And so the Belmont report established 3 basic principles in order to make any research ethical, right? So the 3 basic principles were autonomy of the individual. That is to say, you are free to participate or not to participate. So autonomy is like free will. You can participate, you can choose not to participate, and you can withdraw, okay? Beneficence, which is to say the benefits to the participants outweighs the risks. So the benefits of the participants, so it could be like monetary, it could be related to health, it could be related to learning. Any benefits must outweigh the risk. You cannot put the participant on risk that's greater than any benefit they could get from the research, right? And then the third principle is justice. That is to say, you treat all of your participants fairly, and there is no discrimination. So in the syphilis experiment, was there a discrimination or not? So what type of discrimination was imposed for the syphilis study, in the syphilis study? And you can answer in the chat if you prefer.
Yeah, I was thinking like racism
Mhm.
was a type of discrimination that was in the study.
Right. So that was like a classic case of racial discrimination, right? So some people were denied to the opportunity to be treated based on their racial identity, right? And so yeah, and so that's the those became then the foundation of ethical research, and then they were divided or like subdivided into like a specific principles all researchers must follow. So the first one is like we said, it's like the right to choose, the right to, and then all research must have like consent or consent form. So every participant has to consent to participate, and also the right to withdraw, right? So if I'm running either like in the medical field or even communication, if I'm showing you a movie or like giving you a survey and you find the materials for any reason whatsoever uncomfortable or unsettling or shocking or whatever, you have the right to withdraw at any point. And that's true for any study anywhere in terms of like the academic research. So the right to choose doesn't only cover the right to consent, but also to withdraw your consent after you give it, which is similar to the way we understand consent nowadays, right? Even in, I'm not sure if you, I'm sure you followed the changes and the exams for like sexual harassment. And the idea is consent can be given and withdrawn at any point, okay? So it's not like a one-point thing in which like people would be bound to participate or like to keep participating in the study. And then there's the right to honesty, and this has to do with also the benefits, sorry, and autonomy. That is to say, deception is not permissible for um, for experimentation. So you cannot tell people, for example, um, this is just like, let's say you have an experiment. We just want to take your blood pressure and to donate some blood, and that's it. Where in fact you're actually trying a new medicine, right? Or like injecting them with someone you have not told them about, right? So the right of consent is always linked to the right for honesty, that you give full details of what the research entails, especially the way it affects participants. Okay. However, there is a critical issue here. That is to say, deception in a way that you might hide something could be permissible under ethical research. Okay. In a very like in a small and particular within small and particular confines. Let me give you an example, right? So suppose, for example, I conduct advertising research, all right, and I want to see, for instance, if we include like a character in the background, in a way that people don't notice it, but sort of like their brain does, and so it will affect their attitude. So have you heard of like subliminal messaging before? Anyone heard of subliminal messages, subliminal effect? Okay, let me give you an example. So let me actually call on someone. So Josie, do you drink juice?
Yes, I do.
What juice? What type of juice do you drink?
Orange juice is probably my favorite.
What's your favorite brand?
I like Trader Joe's brand actually.
Okay, that's great. Okay, this is a great example. Okay, so the Trader Joe's brand. Okay, so supposedly here's the thing, right? So supposedly, you are in like you're watching the news, right? Like let's say there's a report about the benefits of orange juice. Okay, and while they just when these type of stories like they would show you like shoppers, and then you would show you like supermarket shelves and people walking outside of the store, blah blah blah. Assume then just for like 1/10 of a second, we got one video frame, and we just inserted Trader Joe's logo within. Or like there will be some person passing, and then just in the background, very little, like you would see like the sign of Trader Joe's, or like the someone wearing the uniform, or like the t-shirts with like a Trader Joe's tag and whatnot. Okay, so something that you would not notice like consciously, but it's there. So that's what we call subliminal messages, and there have been multiple studies that show it is effective, as a matter of fact. So we would show people that versus people who would watch a video with no reference to Trader Joe's whatsoever, right? And we will find that people who watch the one with the subliminal message would be more willing to buy, or to say they want to go and buy something from Trader Joe's. So no experiments been conducted in Trader Joe's per se, but these type of experiments have been conducted for years and years, right? So my question, technically, is there a deception there? Like in the experiment. So I did hide like a logo or something within like the commercial. So is that a type of deception? can someone tell me what your idea of deception is? Like, how would you define deception? Like when I say someone deceived, when you say someone deceived me, what would you mean by being deceived?
You lied or tricked them.
Okay, all right. So Jay, if I hide like a company's logo without people noticing in a commercial in order to trick them, would that be considered deception or not?
It would be.
Yeah. Okay. So that type of deception, as a matter of fact, is allowed in research, because the idea is although it is technically deceptive, right? But it has nothing to do with the autonomy and benefits of the participants. All right. So you see the point. So in other words, I did not introduce orange juice, something I called orange juice to Josie, while it had something else. Like, like, I don't know, like some new materials we're trying, new ingredients that might or might not harm her. So that's deception in a technical sense. But sometimes when deception or like trick is about the research itself, okay, so we're just trying different messages, we're trying different colors, or like something in a video game, and I won't tell you what's the purpose, but it has nothing to do with harming you or benefiting you. Like, so it's separate. It's only about the research question. Then it's fine as long as like you debrief people right after you do that. Okay, so if you expose people to that experiment where they have the video with the subliminal Trader Joe's logo, after they watch the video and answer your questions, you have to tell them, hey, by the way, this research we use that subliminal technique, and so you should be aware of it. And so once you tell the full truth, it doesn't become deception anymore. All right. So if it is some sort of like a trick, just to know how will people react, then you tell them, then it's fine. But it can never be done on anything that harm like the autonomy, like so that violate the autonomy and benefits for the participants. Okay. And then there is the right to privacy, so which is confidentiality and anonymity. So that is to say, if I conduct a survey and all of you answers, no one can trace your answers back to you. So you only get numbers like 40% of participants think that, or like 30% of participants answer this way, but we cannot know the information of like which person answered which question how. Okay, but that's the privacy. So we're going to go over them a bit. So the right to choose will involve an informed consent, and it assures any informed consent would assure like the subjects like the participation is voluntary and what's the reasonable information of what is expected for them. So you cannot tell them, for example, this experiment would take around 5 minutes, but it actually takes around 25 minutes. Okay, so that's like a violation of their expectations. Or like you can tell them that this experiment would have could have minimal effects on you, whereas it could have serious effects, right? So imagine the first wave of participants who took the COVID vaccine. I can assure you that the informed consent will be like tens of pages long, because they would cite for them every single possible side effect that the doctors were aware of. Okay, so you take the consent must be based on disclosure of the details of what is expected from the participants. Okay, and so again, so that's the key about informed. Research is also voluntary, so as we said before, they choose to fully participate or they choose to opt out, right? Why is it necessary to give that option to opt out? Can you think of a scenario where the right to opt out, the opt out would be critical, would be very important?
Wouldn't it like be like opting out to receive the COVID vaccine? Like you have the option to either take it or not.
Right. So assuming, Ray, you agreed to participate, then 2 weeks later you say, actually, no, I wanted to opt out. Why is that important? Why should we allow you to do that?
Well, basically, like if at the time, like I do decide, like say if like someone in my family has died from COVID, like at that time I might want to consider getting the vaccine. But after like further research into like reading, like if there's like any side effects or whatever, you might have a different consideration or point towards actually getting the vaccine.
Right, right. So assuming you discover like you have an allergy or something, or you're waiting for a better vaccine to come out, or you just chicken out, like you said, let me give it a few more months and see what the side effects on other people, then I'll jump in, right? So that's why it necessarily like opting out, even in the middle. And so even for example, if you're in the middle of a treatment, and for any reason, let's say you didn't like the side effects, you can withdraw. That's for medical research. And for communication research, it's the same. Um, can you think of an example where you want to opt out of communication research or media research? What would be a situation in which, actually I want to stop participating? Can you think of any example?
Well, the one that comes to mind is like, so in my communication theory class, we're talking about the Boston Globe scandal when a bunch of priests and stuff like that were deemed to be molesting kids, like that dated back to like years, like 10 or something years. And like there was a bunch of lawyers and stuff like that that were opting out to speak to these journalists because they didn't want to give them any more information. So I guess it's like, would that be an example?
Right. So if you were like in a research setting, though, although that actually applies in a general ethical sense, right? So even if you're covering a story and the informants wanted to like stop, then it's fine. But can you think like if I'm conducting an experiment, let's say about media effects, for example, whether it's like visual or gaming, can you think of a scenario in which you might say in the middle, you know what, I actually want to stop doing this?
Yeah, I have a personal example. I was like in a I participated like in sleep study. Um Me and my friend decided to we just like they were compensating for completing like surveys and like going to their lab and sleeping there, and like they track your data for sleep for people who are suffering from like sleep apnea. So like I went there and I like finished the initial survey, and then I got like compensated, and then I realized like a lot of their dates for like going in and sleeping at the lab overlapped in a bad way with my schedule. So like I was like, okay, I don't think I can participate in this study. So I called him up and told him like I had to opt out of
Yeah,
of the study.
yeah. Yeah, so that's a perfect example. So it might be something, it doesn't have to be something serious. So any reason, like as Jared was saying, just it conflicts with my schedule, or even I just got bored. That's fine. You have the right to withdraw at any moment. And we had a similar situation in, sometimes you could just be excited about participating in a study, but then you realize that it runs for like 3 weeks and you have to show up at the lab 2 days a week at 8 a.m. and you're like, I have other things to do. Don't want to do this. I was just excited the first time, but now, I don't feel like it. That's fine. People should have the right to do that. And then the right to privacy. So privacy is divided into like two things, like anonymity and confidentiality. Does anyone know the difference between anonymity and confidentiality? What does anonymous mean? Do you know what anonymous means?
They don't know who you are.
That's anonymous. And if I say something is confidential, what does that mean?
I feel like it's kind of like your privacy is kept in a way.
Right. Okay. So confidential is confidential known or unknown?
Known.
Yes. But confidential means only known to
The tester or the
yes.
whoever's running
Yes.
the research.
Yes. So and Santi and Fernando, right? So anonymous means it's unknown. So you have no way of telling like who this person is. And so anonymous in anonymous research, for example, I personally, if you're conducting, let's say, a survey or an experiment in which people then answer on like a sheet or a computer, I cannot even know, even the tester or the researcher cannot know the answers of the individual participants. So here, for example, so like let's say Josie, Miley, and Jared participated. I would only see the answers with no names attached to them when I download the data from the survey. Okay, so they are fully anonymous. I cannot trace the answers back to them. So that's anonymous. Okay. So you only deal when you say anonymous or like anonymity, we would only deal with de-identified data, which is like you cannot know the participant's name, but then only just a code. So when they take a line, it would be like a random number generated for each participant, and it will define that like those like it's line by line, and it shows us how they answered in every question. But I cannot link those anonymous codes to the names. So that's anonymous. So anonymity can be obtained if you're doing experiments, most of the time, or sometimes, and surveys. Okay. Can you, as a researcher, have anonymity if you're conducting interviews, in-person interviews? Can the participants remain anonymous?
If they're in person, it's impossible to
Yeah.
remain anonymous.
Yeah. So it is impossible. That is correct. If I'm conducting interview, like, yeah, I have to know. Okay, I'll report my interview with Grant or Fernando or Ray, so I know how each one of them was answering. In that case, we would apply confidentiality. That is to say, the readers or anyone who will look at the research other than the researchers themselves cannot know the names of the participants and how they answered. I can know it, but when I publish my research, I won't say like Grant say blah blah blah. I'll give Grant like a pseudonym and just descriptions, so like white male college student, something like that. And then here's how they answer. Or like they give them like false name, like instead of Grant, they'll call him like Michael, and they would say like, yeah, it's a fake name or like a pseudonym. It's not a real name. Okay. And so that's why it would ensure the privacy of the participants, even if they revealed it to the researcher. And by the way, when we'll talk about interviews in a few weeks, but people reveal a lot in person interviews. You'll be surprised. Now there's an issue, however, with privacy. That is to say, with digital. So there is a debate within the communication studies, and I have actually thought about this issue a lot. That is to say, there's a lot of publicly available data out there, and it relates to people, like personal information. And even individuals don't realize how much they put out there related to them, right? Um, and so imagine, for instance, we're doing a content analysis, okay? And we go to Instagram and download images for content analysis. And those images, let's say, are coming from just San Diego, USD's college students, okay? You can do that without those people giving you consent, right? You can download images from Instagram, use it in your research, even without the people giving you their consent. Why is that? Why do you think that is the case?
Because of Instagram's privacy policy, I guess.
Right. And if the pictures were made not private, that means they are
Public.
yes. Okay, yeah, that's the word I wanted to hear. Because they are technically public information. Once you post it, so like you posted it and you had no privacy like policy. Yeah, and even non-followers could download them, right? And so if they were used in research, um, you might have thought that okay, this is just on Instagram. But yeah, assuming we took it like on a like in research and then we publish it. We publish it like in a journal and your images would stay there for decades and decades. Um, so yeah, that's one thing. So you might agree, you gave your consent to Instagram about one thing, but you didn't realize how it might be used by others. So that's one issue of privacy that's not traditionally been covered before. And secondly, you can put pieces together that can actually allow you to know more about person. So it's not like, for example, I download data from one platform, but I go into, let's say, your Instagram profile. Let's say if you're on Twitter or if you're on LinkedIn, I look up information about you from like voter records and things like that, or like a yellow page guides. Um, and then if I keep doing this for years, I can draw a pretty good picture of what you do, like where did you graduate from, what's your school, what's your preference, what your personality is like, right? And so you could do that digitally, but and even without people giving you their consent, because they made everything public. But do people really understand the full scope of what can be done with the data they publish online? So that's one ethical issue that researchers are dealing with. So again, technically, it doesn't fall into the scope of like university approval, but more and more people are raising this issue. Uh, so, for example, some academic journals won't allow you to publish images that you downloaded from Instagram unless they give you consent. Like, so you can conduct a study. You say we conducted content analysis to say which themes or like what type of post college students like or post online, but I cannot show specific images, even if they are made public, even if they are public. I cannot post them because you might agree for something to be published online, but being published in an academic journal that will be recorded like and read by a wider audience. Yeah, so you might have not agreed to that. That's like another issue. Like, yeah, you can use the images for your own research, but you cannot publish them unless you get like a signed consent form, right? Okay, and then there's also like ethical right to honesty and respect. So again, like you can tell the truth, as we said, before in most cases or after. In and let me add one more thing about it. Like all type of experiments have a form of deception, but not in terms of like what you would call what do you call like omission. That's the word I was looking for. So I personally do advertising research, okay, and then I would show one group one version with like a celebrity, and another version of the ad would be with another type of celebrity, okay. So let's say like a fashionista versus like an athlete. And I want to see the effects in terms of like if the celebrity matched the brand perception or not. In order for that to work, I have not to tell the participants what the other group is seeing, right? Or like I won't tell them, hey, by the way, we want to see if you would like, we want to see if this celebrity would be effective or not. Okay? I cannot tell them that. From an empirical perspective, why I cannot tell them that? What would be the effects on the research? Did you get my question? Like if I'm showing you commercials, let's say I'm showing you Instagram post with a celebrity endorses, I'm just showing you that, but I won't tell you my hypothesis. Why should I tell you my hypothesis? What's the reason?
Is it to like not have your participants have like any sort of bias towards your research question?
Yeah, yeah. So they would cheat. Yeah, that's the point, right? I want to see if I tell them, hey, by the way, I'm going to show you a commercial by a celebrity, and I want to see if you would like the commercial or like the post more. Then yeah, they would either be biased for, so they want to prove me right, or they want to prove me wrong, right? So it could go like in either direction. So I would hide that from the participants. But again, I won't highlight the nature of the research. It's still about commercials and or still about Instagram posts. So I have to tell them about that. But you don't have to tell the participants about your hypothesis. You just in general tell them, hey, this is an experiment. It would run for whatever, like 10, 15 minutes. And you're going to see this type of pictures, like images of like models or athletes or um, travelers, etc., whatever your topic is. You don't have to tell them then what's your hypothesis, what you're expecting them to answer, right? Because that will violate actually the credibility of their answers. Okay, and one important thing is like you should tell them if there is like shocking or graphic content, you have to tell them before you start the research. This is a must. You cannot tell them. You have to tell them like there's graphic, like there's violence, nudity, etc. You have to tell them before the research starts. Why is that important?
So they know what is going to be tested and what they're going to be seeing in a way.
Why is it if there's graphic content? Why is it important to tell them specifically?
Because maybe they don't want to see it.
Yeah, people have yeah. So if it's like shocking, so like people have conditions. You might have people with like a heart condition or something, and you might cause something like someone like a great deal of distress or like a heart attack or something. It could happen. This is especially true for media research. So we have scholars who study like violent images, like people of like killing or chopping heads or like animal cruelty or like porn or things like that. And you cannot just show people that out of nowhere. Like you have to prepare them very clearly about it before you start. So yeah, and this is related to like consent and clarity. You have to use a clear language. That is to say, you cannot only use jargon in your informed consent, in your consent form. So the consent must be informed, and informed means the participant can understand the implications. So supposedly we're doing like a medical research, and then you're telling people what they're getting in their treatment, right? But it's all with these scientific terms or names, these long Latin names that you cannot even pronounce. Technically, you could say, well, everything is there, but the participant won't understand what you're talking about. So if you want to put that, okay, you tell them, and that's the element like you find in, let's say, aspirin, or like it's similar to aspirin, it has an effect on blah, 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 okay? So you have to explain in plain terms in a way that participants, again, can understand the implications and weigh the risk and benefits, okay? And so similarly, when you write something about you're going to see violent images, you cannot say, for example, that that might compel or like push participants or push people not to participate. So let me water it down, or try to say in another way. So you're going to see content that is unconventional, or like, yeah, you cannot do that. Once you have something, you have to clearly and explicitly say what it is. So you see the picture, right? And so yeah, so people from like mid-educational level, any adult can understand what we're talking about. So no jargons unless you explain it, but you try to avoid it as much as possible for the consent form. Okay. So that's it for today. Next week we're going to talk about the Milgram experiment. And so in the reading, there's a good part about this. I encourage you to read it, and we'll talk more about the Milgram experiment. Any questions?
I had a question, Professor. So, just for Friday, so we have an exam on Friday, just to be clear.
Right.
Okay. Is it going to be multiple choice, or going to be how's it going to be set up?
So it's going to be multiple choice, and thank you for reminding me, Ray. I have a study guide. So going to post it today. I was supposed to post it before the class, but yeah, I'm going to post it today, and it will have like the topics that we're going to cover in the exam. So it's all multiple choice or true or false.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's gonna take class on, that's gonna be on Friday class, correct?
Right. So there will be no lecture on Friday.
Okay.
It's the exam.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
So do we not come to the Zoom meeting on Friday?
Nope.
Do we have the whole day to do it, or is it from 8 to 9?
You'll have like 3 hours, so I'll open it, but yeah, I'll open it like at 8, but people would have 3 hours to take it. But once you start, you only have like the 55 minutes, but the time window would remain open for 3 hours.
Thank you.
Okay. All good? Right, so yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.